What is this mess? Yep, Boxcab project. So how did all of this get started? I think that's the question here. I've got a weird thing for box cabs, and I think it goes all the way back to my childhood when I took some trips to the B&O Railroad Museum and experienced Central New Jersey 1000 in person, and I've always had a love for it. I think especially because you could see how much it had been modified over the years and patched up and things were moved around, but you know, it's also the prototype, right, for diesel electrics to follow. But sometime in my teens, you know, I got deeper into model railroading and started messing with the little Grandt Line box cabs. Model die casting had their full-size box cab, and they've just always had a special place for me. So I had always had this idea that, you know, wouldn't it be really cool to have a box cab with side rods? And the project on the left here is a project that I've had on YouTube already, and that's my Grandt Line 23-tonner pair, a little duo there with side rods, and they've got DCC and sound, and you know, they're cool. In the middle there is you know, the old model die casting box cab, which with some detail work and some attention turns into a pretty cool little model. Well, not too long ago, well, a few years back, Bachmann did the unthinkable. They brought out a 45-ton GE diesel with side rods, and it's another one of my absolute favorite locomotives. You know, much like John Allen, I've got a thing about, you know, no diesels on the layout, but if it's a side rod, well, you know, we can work that in. So that was an important piece of the puzzle. I'm just going to move that over here. And I thought, you know, there's got to be a way to take that and convert it to Hon3. And so if you look through some of my other videos, you'll discover that I have actually been able to convert it to Hon3. So this is on dual gauge track right now. The yellow one is standard gauge, and the green chassis is Hon3. So you're looking at my collection of inspirations here. Add to it Central New Jersey 1000, which I thought, you know, I think I can adapt that to work. Alright, so I'm going to take us on a quick tour of the CAD model that I'm using to drive the 3D prints we're about to see. So if you've ever seen Central New Jersey 1000, you would immediately recognize what you're looking at here. This is essentially a pretty perfect copy of Central New Jersey 1000, except that it has been compressed to fit the 45-ton GE chassis that we are building this around. So where that shows up is that I have reduced the space between the windows and played around with some of the proportions to achieve this. So let's just go ahead and give this a little spin here. So as you can see, this is a fully detailed model. I've actually gone in and captured every single rivet, every single seam, every piece of sheet metal, and tried to be very faithful to the original inspiration. Take a look at the end here. You can really see how much detail I managed to incorporate in this model. And in particular, getting into the end beam here, things like the polling pockets, all these are fully detailed with actual rivets or bolt heads, whatever's appropriate. The coupler pocket is unique. This has actually been designed to work with Hon3 coupler height. And you can see the stanchions for the grab irons and the coupler brake bar. Moving up into here, a level of detail with the headlight bracket. The headlight itself is actually extremely detailed. And the plan is to put an MV lens in here and backlight it with a piece of fiber optic. So we'll drill a little hole in the MV lens, poke the fiber optic through, and it'll look like an actual bulb in there. Should be really nice. But you can see the strap iron, the straps here, which will be for the grab irons, and those are already cored. And those are actually showing up in the 3D print on my Phrozen 4K. Moving up to the roof, you can see the radiator detail. So we've got the center tanks, and then the outboard tanks, and all the flange and rivet detail is actually in there for each of the cooling fins, as well as the flanges and the pipes through the roof. And then of course we get to the center section here over the prime mover and all the plate iron detail, rivets, vent stacks, rain caps, all of that is in place on here. So now that we've got oriented with this, and I would point out that if you compare this frame to what's on the GE 45-ton diesel, this looks completely different. And that's the reason I was motivated to go ahead and just do the entire thing from top to bottom, was that just the frame on the GE 45-ton just was not working with this body. They just look like two different eras of locomotive. So I'm going to go ahead and do a cut through here. I want that side. And show you what's going on inside. So this revision that I'm working on is actually going to mount the die-cast chassis unit from the 45-ton GE. So that would be removing the green plastic piece that you see in the video and just putting that die-cast chassis piece right inside here. And the trucks are going to ride up inside of these holes. But this is designed to be a direct fit. So these 4 screws here and these 2 screws on the end actually integrate with that chassis. The screws on the perimeter here, there'll be a total of 6 of those. You're seeing 3 on this half. Those are going to be what secures the body. And I'm thinking at this point I'll probably add a rib detail inside of here to capture this bottom wall and keep things from warping. And that is one of the reasons that you see a lot of this ribbing detail in here, is I've been trying to reduce the tendency for this to warp. Right now, I've actually got an awful lot of wall thickness on this. I'm probably going to try to reduce that again, but I'm just trying strategies to kind of keep this thing from puckering and deforming after it's been printed. I've definitely had some problems with warping on this being an open section. So one of the things that I've done deliberately in this revision is all of the roof detail is separately applied. So you can see right here where the radiator tanks pop in. This is accomplishing a couple of different things. It's giving me vent holes to allow the resin to drain out of the print during the print process. I'm going to go ahead and I'm punching a hole through the roof here for all of this detail to sit in, and then I'll punch some holes in the roof here for the resin to drain out of. But all that's going to be separately applied, and the reason is that when you print this, a lot of times the layer strata will actually show up on surfaces like this, depending on how it's angled. So I'd like the ability to completely finish this roof off before adding all the detail to it. So that about completes our tour of the CAD model. Okay, well, here's the collection of experiments. We'll start at the beginning. So originally what I wanted to do was to figure out how to just put the box cab body on the stock chassis. And I did that and I said, you know, it just doesn't have the right look to it. You'll notice that the chassis is also flanked by the 3D print for the power truck and an unmodified power truck. So this project coincided with me actually getting into 3D printing. It was one of the first projects I attempted, or, you know, was trying to get into. And so in conjunction with trying to design this up for 3D printing, I was also going through the learning curve of 3D printing failures and trying to understand why things weren't working. I started off 3D printing with a Photon S, which is actually what this was printed on. And this was my first project for the Phrozen 4K. Early on, I was actually having a lot of trouble with the 4K resin. I don't know if it was a bad batch, but I very quickly started mixing it with Siraya Fast ABS Gray, about 50-50. I started to call it my magic mix, you know, like some radio station. And started to get much better results really quickly. The 4K, for whatever reason, wasn't sticking to the build plate, and the prints were coming out really soft. They weren't actually hardening up very well. So I guess to kind of walk through this, the initial idea was to just have this with tabs, and it was actually going to be a substitute for the existing Bachmann shell. And I thought, you know, it'd be a cool little product for eBay or something. But like I said, it just didn't look right, and I've got some kind of perfectionist problems apparently, at least I'm told, so I kept chipping away. I guess to pull one of these that's the most recent, you will see that I've been messing around with how much detail to leave on the roof and how much detail to apply separately. One of the problems I'm having with this is when we start to get toward printing the roof, grab one of these, I'm having some problems with cupping, and it's leaving a place, you know, also leaving a place for the resin to drain out of these in the printing. If you don't leave adequate room, you know, for the resin to drain out, it gets to be a really gooey, weird mess inside, and it's really best to just have a great big hole that this stuff can drain out of. I want to zoom in here for a close-up view of this thing. You can really see the level of detail that the Phrozen 4K is able to generate. The fact that I can get things like these stanchions here for the coupler brake bar and the grab iron rail that goes across the front here is really pretty astounding. It even prints the grab iron holes, which is just, it's crazy that something's got that kind of resolution. So I'm going to turn this here. You can see the end detail. Just, I mean, it's just beautiful. The stuff that it picks up. So I've got another version here. This is one without the frame, and you can see all the roof detail that's printed in place. Now there's some things that are missing. If you know the original prototype, then you'll know that there's supposed to be radiator cooling fins that are coming out of it here, and the stack vents here, which are on my Formlabs print. But this was pretty successful. I'm going to actually try to go back to this, which leaves a pretty good vent in the top. So I'll probably end up putting the stacks on, or the stack covers on, as a separate piece, just to leave these nice drain holes in the top here. But yeah, I'd like to try to get the frame and the roof and, you know, the majority of the body in one shot if I can. It just makes it so much better looking with the final model if you're not having to fill and fit seams and things. Alright, well, thanks for checking out the 45-ton GE side rod box cab project update. Hopefully over my break here I'll get some time to get back on this thing and get one of these printed that works right, fits right, and doesn't warp. On that note, we're going to go ahead and just drive the prototype on out of here.